Technical difficulties, classic. Oh, so on the screen here, you can see my orchard, one of my orchards, and some morel mushrooms at the bottom there. Those bad boys are one of the more coveted things, and we're going to talk about those and where to find them. So I live on a farm. It's 53 acres of farmland. I do have my animals, like these beautiful chickens, and I use them for their little butt nuggets, eggs. That's how they pay rent. And I hatch them and I raise them, and they are just used for eggs. So if that makes anybody rest better, they are not meat chickens. They are just happy chickens. I have my dogs, which is the Great Dane here is Tom Hanks, and the corner puppy there is Essie. I have 2 alpacas, which I use for wool. I have my lambs, which I also use for wool. And this year I'll be breeding baby doll lambs, and they are going to be for vineyard management, specifically for leaf removal. They're really small. On the side there, I have Winona Jugs. That's my cow. She just lives a great life. She's not for anything. I just saved her, and now she lives with us. The majority of my animals, other than my chickens, the majority of them are just orphans or maybe injured or rescued. And so most of my lambs are orphans, and I raise them in my house with me. They bottle feed them. And in the corner there, you can see a little black chicken on top with my son. And that was a little special needs chicken that we raised in our house with us. So that's a little bit about my animals. So early edibles that you can get in Ontario. These are all things, most of them have passed, but this is the time of year when you can spot these things the best because they've gone to seed. And when they go to seed, you can spot them for future, so you know where to find them. It's hard to find them when they're young unless you kind of have honey holes, and a lot of foragers know where theirs are. So those are wild garlic. Ramps are wild leeks, which I don't recommend harvesting. We have a lot of over foraging of ramps and wild leeks. So I'm going to steer clear of those. Morel mushrooms, wild chives, which are a dime a dozen. If you're buying chives in Ontario, you're borderline crazy because they're everywhere. Fiddleheads or ferns, which you very well might be growing in your own garden. Dandelion flowers, everybody's spraying to get rid of them, and they are wonderful. They're amazing flowers. They're so versatile. Please don't get rid of your dandelions. Violets are beautiful purple little flowers. They are edible. They have wonderful color to them, and they grow in groves. And not only that, their leaves are also medicinal. And then asparagus. Asparagus is my next to morels. It's asparagus for my favorite foraging in the spring. So for morels, probably the most coveted prize for forages in spring. Morels grow in orchards. They grow in forestry. They grow in the middle of grass. There's really, you can do as much research on where to find them, and it is good to go to those places, but they can just pop up anywhere. This year I had so many friends that didn't know that they had morels growing in their own backyard. You could get a load of mulch and they can just turn up, and they come out of the ground within a matter of hours to a day. So you kind of can be checking all the time. What they love is sweet soil. So they love sugary soil, places where fruit is rotting, like apples, peaches, and pears. And in Ontario, peaches are the go-to. So for my friends who are foragers, what they do is talk to farmers who have no interest in finding them and ask for permission to go into their orchards between making sure that it's on that farmer's schedule, whether it be they're spraying or just, I mean, it's our homes. So people just walking around is not preferred. So you can talk to maybe a neighboring farm, somebody across the street. If in spring, you can walk their orchard rows and see if you can find any of these. There are false morels, so you do want to get into some research on these. But although they all are called false morels, they are very noticeably not morels, so it's easy to tell them apart. They love burnt land, so anywhere where there might be a fire. In BC, they pay you by weight if you go and forage for them, and you go into where there's like been forest fires. They like somewhat disturbed land, and that doesn't mean cultivated or tilled, but land that has the tractors driving down it, or maybe has slight shifts. People are walking around, and that, I don't know why, but they like that. They like rotting wood. So if you're in a forestry area, maybe you have a brushy area in your backyard, or you border on an area that is brushy. You can find rotted wood, like a old log or something like that that's on the ground. You want to look in that area. If you see one, there's probably a lot more coming up. Edges of grass to soil crossovers. So they like the edge of where grass stops and maybe soil begins, i.e. in orchards, and under old brush, so rotting leaves and so on. Weeds that you are stepping on, dandelion. Dandelion is by far, for me, the most readily available, easiest thing. You have it in your yards, you're probably mowing it or spraying for it, but before you do that, consider what you can use it for. So here's a driveway, and I took this today because it's impossible for me to do it all, but here's a driveway, and these are male dandelion plants, and those are edible greens. They're bitter and peppery and a little spiky, but blanched and made into a pesto is a wonderful kind of somewhat radishy style flavor. In this picture, and now it's just going to get into a mishmash of photos, but so if you look at the picture on the left, this is a picture of our farmhouse, and you can see all of the ferns, which I eat the tops of a lot of those ferns as fiddleheads. But what you might not see is that there's wild asparagus growing in there. And I didn't plant that wild asparagus. It did it itself. The seeds can spread miles with wind, so they'll just come up anywhere. On the top right, you'll see that's today, and that's asparagus gone to seed. So when you're driving, you might see something tall like this, and you'll start seeing the seeds forming, and they're brushy. It's like a little bush. It's very fine. That's asparagus, and I'm going to talk about the seeds later. And then in the bottom right is the dandelion, and that's the male dandelion. You can tell, one, because there's no flower on it. You can go to the center of those, and you're not going to see a stalk with a flower head starting. And they also have really fine stems that go down, like multiple stems come out of one root, and you can see a little bit of the red purplish bottom there. Italians, in Italian culture, we call it cicoria. It's part of the chicory family. It's a bitter green, which is amazing for your digestive system. It's got great immunities and super high in vitamins that you need. So violets are also this time of year. You've probably got them growing in your flower beds. It's something that if you can buy it and plant it, it will just continue to grow. They're beautiful. They are edible, and they are wonderful for dyeing. And I'm going to show you an example of how we dye it. And in the top right there, you can see those are macaroons that I made for Easter, and then it's just fresh violets on the macaroons. And when they bake, you've got edible flower in there, which is really beautiful. The bottom right photo was supposed to be another photo, so it is a stock photo, and it has no relevance to this at all. Awesome. Sustainable picking. It is super important that you are taking what you need, not what you want. On your own land, If you want to take what you want, that's up to you. But on trails and on other people's property, knowing what you need versus knowing what you want is super important. Asparagus is a great example of, if you take all of that asparagus, you will not have a patch in 5 years' time. Not next year. You'll think, okay, it's good. I see that I've got some coming up. But it takes 3 to 5 years for asparagus to seed itself enough to eat. So you have to think responsibly, and I'm going to talk about that, about what you can take and the ones that you want to go for. The seeds on asparagus you're going to start seeing them coming up now, and they are really easy to spot because you've got this really mustard yellow bush that you'll see with red seeds on them. Inside of those red little husks are anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe 1 seed. What they have to do is dry out though, and they need to dry out on the plant. The way that I help them out is by letting them dry on the plant and then going back to where I know the wild asparagus grows and shaking that bush so that it drops its seeds in late fall. This is going to help those seeds provide for that small area better. Of course, the wind is going to do its job, but this just helps it out a little bit more. And then those will then propagate for the following year, and you'll see in early spring the little ferns coming up. I have to say that in the years that we have been foraging for wild asparagus on our property and in a couple of spots along railroads and public areas, we've grown those asparagus plots by over double, just by helping the seeds out. And then I do take a little bit of, let's say, each plant, just a little bit, and I spread them in other areas away from it, starting new patches. It's really helpful. And asparagus grows really well along roadsides and railroad tracks, because the cars going by and the train going by spread the seeds in the fall off of the dying plant. Other wild seeds to collect would be wild onions or wild garlic. They're a dime a dozen. There is a lot of them, and over harvesting on these plants is pretty difficult because there's so much of them. They seed out like crazy. So the reason that I collect these seeds is not because I need more wild garlic or I need more onions, but because they're fantastic pollinators. These guys treat the bees awesome. So the bees just love patches of it. The flowers come very early, and they're really beautiful. It's also really pretty in your beds. So I spread the seeds again in fall for them to come up in early spring. And I'm going to talk about uses, and I have some examples of uses for onions and garlic coming up. That's my bed, and I have wild onion spread along the edge of most of my garden. And I have to say my garden is an acre and a half, if not more. Plus I have a half an acre of sweet corn and just seeds pretty much anywhere I can put them. So I line the garden with the wild onion, and just for treating the bees, and they don't get touched. These don't get harvested. They just seed themselves out by themselves, and they're just for the bees to be happy, and it makes me happy making them happy. On the left here, I have some seeds from rapini and other seeds that I grow in, and beans that I grow in the garden. It's not so much foraging, but collecting your own seeds is very simple. It's a great cost-efficient way of replenishing your garden the following year. And it's also a way that you can grow it in the winter. So if you have a grow light, or if you have a sunny window, you could be growing microgreens or herbs in small pots year round, so long as you have a warm place to do it. So Saving seeds all year round is great. In my hand on the right side are scapes. Scapes are the tops of the garlic. You cut those off so that they don't go to seed. So the pods on the top would turn in, and then you would have garlic seeds. But what you don't want is for all of the energy to go into the flowering. You want to stop that, and you want the energy to go back into building the cloves. So on wild garlics, you still get scapes, which is a really wonderful product for flavor. And I'm going to show you how you can turn that into a powder. I don't just forage for food, and apparently I can't spell as well. Well, I already knew that, but so it supplies for year-round making, not fro. I am an artist, and so I do a lot of fiber art. I have an affinity for wool, but I love weaving, and things that you can forage for that are available around a lot of places would be willow, dandelion rod, husk from corn or from anything really, any husk, dogwood, which I have a picture coming up, pine needles, catgrass, bamboo rod, and acorn tops. And I have a little acorn top there with a little needle felted filling, and you can use those for decoration, making garland come Christmas when you have some, maybe you have some downtime or a craft. It's great for kids, and they store in a dry place easily. Here I have some willow that I'm going to show some examples in person, but willow is a wonderful plant. It grows a lot of places that you have probably been. And the most amazing thing about willow is that it is one of the fastest growing and fastest rooting plants. So you can easily propagate and help willow by cutting an angled cut off of fresh willow and sticking it in the ground very simply. So you can help out and not be over harvesting it, but it does shoot out multiple shoots from when you cut it. I do baskets, and I love baskets. I just love vessels of any kind for collecting. So, and you can see these are all made from wild willow. I do grow a lot of willow, but this is wild, and some dogwood. And in the top right corner there, that little bird nest is lined with pine needles. The pine needles are another one that you can collect. You can dry them and rehydrate them, but you can very easily weave with those, and it's a great thing to have in a crafter's studio. Something new to try if you like it. So I actually forgot to bring my dandelion rod, which I have in the garage, but on the left side there, you can see you've got super long dandelion rod, and that's where the flower would have come off. Those flowers have already gone to seed, blown away, and then you've got these super long rods. So what you can do is pick those and hang them from the flower side and let them dry, and those can then be woven. They can be soaked in hot water and then woven into little baskets or vessels. Dogwood, you can tell because it's a very bright red. It's a beautiful color. And with any of these products, you have to cut them and then dry them. And they require at least 5-6 months of drying. I would say minimum. You want all of the moisture to be completely out of them. And then you re-soak those to weave. You can weave also any of this fresh. Unfortunately, when it dries, it's going to lose over half of its volume. So it'll shrink, and you'll lose any tension you have in anything that you've woven. That's the end of my slideshow here. And stop sharing. So I should be back, right? It's me? Okay. Okay. The live broadcast of Zoom has stopped due to you have stopped screen sharing. Okay. No, wait, where's me? Oh, there I am. Okay. I'm back? Okay, good. Technology is not something I forage for, and I won't be. So So a couple of the things that I touched on, I'm going to start from the beginning, and I think it was morels. So morels are a wonderful wild mushroom, and they have a fantastic earthiness. They are very rare, and people look all over. You can get a very good price for them. I have to say that all of the morels I get are from my property. I have one friend's orchard that I also go to because they don't want them, but I get them all from mine. So like I talked about, it's super important that you are talking to local farmers, talking to people with land, whether you can go on it and you can look for them. The one thing that's kind of a myth about morels is that you can overpick them. The fungus that grows that makes morels grow, because we know that mushrooms are a fungus, it runs underground. So what's above ground is not so much a representation of what's going on underground. So if you have 10 above ground, that's great. You could take all 10 off because that is running underground just as well. There's a saying called flick it before you pick it. And that's pretty much that if you flick it, it will spread its spores better. There's no proof to say that it's going to completely help, but it can't do any harm. One of the ways that I make sure that I'm spreading spores or spreading the morels as far as possible is that the lawnmower does a lot of that for me. Any of the ones that are coming up in the grass between the rows usually get chopped, and then those just go spreading everywhere. But one of the ways is that I take fresh morels that are not maybe the nicest, maybe they've kind of got a little bit soft. I blend those with ash, which, as I said, morels like burnt areas. So I spread it with clean ash. I mix it with molasses. I talked about how they like sweet, they like sugar. So I mix it with molasses. They need salt to preserve it. And then a little bit of water. And also honey would help. And if you blend that together, you can dilute that into a crazy amount of water with billions and billions of spores and spread that. Morels, a lot like a lot of things that we forage, take a long time to propagate. So this is not something, when you do that, you're going to see them in next year or the year after. It could take 5 years, it could take longer for that colony underground to build enough to grow mushrooms. That's why they are so rare, because to this day, there really is no way of mass farming them, which makes it all the better and enjoyable. I do pick a lot of morels, so a forager's probably best tool is a dehydrator or a gas oven, and that's why I always dehydrate some, because then I have them for winter. And realistically, no matter what you're doing in real time, you should be thinking about what you're going to be eating or what you're going to be needing for winter time to be sustainable, a little bit more sustainable. So drying morels is a wonderful way to do that. They're super pungent. And then from here, you can make powders to make stock. You can just rehydrate them. You just rehydrate them in warm water or hot water. Then you can use that water to flavor rice or so on. So morels are a wonderful, probably the coolest thing, like the most braggable thing to find, I guess.
Can I just ask a quick question just while we're on the mixture for your morels? Why do you put salt in? Does the salt have a function in there?
Yeah, it does. What it is, 100%, can't really say. I just know that I have to put salt in there, and I don't fully understand why. I just know that it's called a slurry, or there's other names for it, but like in that slurry, the salt is like a preservative almost, I guess. Just like we cure meats with salt, just like we would cure other things with salt. it's almost preserving it from not getting, it's weird because it's a fungus, but we don't want it to mold. A mold would, it would be counterproductive. So the way that I observe it, and this is just from learning, again, this is from learning from other people who forage morels, especially in the United States, is that salt is helping in the preservation of that slurry when it's going into the ground. I don't have much answer outside of that. The more pertinent ingredients is definitely the sugar content and the ash, and then the morel itself, like those things together. Side note too, also, is that if you don't want to, like, you can make that slurry, but if you don't have the environment for that to thrive, it's not going to work, obviously. So one of the things is wood chips. So if you have like old, not old wood chips, but if you have wood chips, or you can get like sawdust or something like that, you can soak that slurry mixed with water into that wood, and then it's going to go further. It soaks in, and then put that sawdust or that wood out somewhere in a brushy area, and then you're giving it wood to start. You're giving it a place to start, a good start. And actually, so like wood chips from chicken coops, like manure-y wood chips. If you have a chicken coop, if you have even like hamsters, or like any kind of rabbits, that kind of thing. If you have small wood chips and you have that like poopy wood chips, those can be mixed in with it and then spread outside, and not like, yeah. And I see a question, is it too late to look for morels? It is. Morels has a really short period, so they are going to come up. Last year I didn't get a good harvest until May 10th, but this year I had my harvest on April 30th, so or like the end of April. So you just kind of have to keep your eye out. And I know this sounds crazy, but I just have this feeling inside my gut when they're coming up. Like I just have a feeling. And one of those is like a sunny day, some rain followed by sunny day. And they love like the sun. They don't need heat. They want the sun. And then they want that soil to get soft enough for them to break through. So it is too late now, but what it is good for is for you to cultivate relationships with farms now for spring. So you're driving past the same, let's say, peach farm every day, and you're like, I never thought about that. Maybe not right now. They might be busy. They might take a bit to get back to you. So it's good to start. But thinking about talking to them in the fall time about possibly going on their land come spring, not in the moment. Not, I see morels in your first row, and then you're on the phone with them, because it's not going to work like that. Everybody's busy. So right now is the best time to cultivate that. Yeah. So I hope that helps. So then next I have I'm going to talk about dandelion, because I love dandelion so much. So the bitter greens on the dandelion is the male. So not for every, but for the majority of dandelions, what you don't realize is that you've got the greens coming up, and then you've got the flower, and that's the female. And then nearby is the male. And the male doesn't have a flower. That is the chicoria. That is the bitter greens that is great for you to eat. There is a spikiness to it. If they are very spiky, you can blanch them, and that will very simply just get rid of the spikiness. And then you can use that as a pesto or so on, which is fabulous because it's at the same time as your wild garlic. So you can be using your dandelion greens and your wild garlic together. So instead of spraying pesticides on your lawn, your front lawn, like every subdivision I've ever been in, I've seen dandelions. So this has got to be the most easily ready forage in all around here. So if you see that, you can keep the flower. And if you use the flower for something, so my friend Jo, I didn't make any, but she makes dandelion jelly. So this is ginger and dandelion jelly. You get a beautiful color. It's slightly botanical, and it's just a wonderful way to use the flower. Secondly, you can dry those petals, and you can use those for dyeing, tie-dye, dyeing wool, like dyeing fabrics. Everybody knows that you can face paint, and if you've ever been a child on a playground, you know that you can just douse your friends in dandelion and really ruin the rest of their afternoon. So it's got wonderful dye to it. Yellow is my favorite color. It's literally the essence of my life. I love yellow. Yes, you can. So the greens from the female plant you can eat, and they're usually the ones that you want to blanch, but you want to eat them when they're very young. So if you spread them apart, you'll see the flower is not all the way up. It's not to a yellow flower yet. You'll see like the little buds inside. So you can pick those. Fun fact, you can also pickle those really, really young buds. They're kind of like capers. They're like cheap capers. So you can pickle those really little buds and eat those. Those are really fun on like a charcuterie board, especially like a full foraged charcuterie board, which is really cool if you look up ideas on completely free charcuterie, is things like those little buds. And then you can eat the greens. Totally. Again, not that wiping out the dandelion population is an issue, but the females, obviously, we need to reproduce. So those are the ones that are going to seed out. It's not an issue because there's so many of them, and it's probably not an issue. But yeah, you can totally eat the greens that are with it, both of them. I like them really young, and you're going to wash them, soak them in some water, and then toss those out, dry them off. And they're fabulous with lemon, like just straight lemon juice, olive oil, or like any oil that you want, a little bit of garlic. You're going to make essentially a salad dressing, and then mixing them with some lighter greens, like a mesclun mix or something like that might help, but because they're very bitter. But anything bitter greens is wonderful for your body. They have fantastic immunities. So it's the best. Yeah, they're awesome. Just eat the whole front lawn. Like, honestly, like rabbits do it, kids do it. Like, just eat the lawn, or you're gonna live. Unless you sprayed it. Don't eat the lawn if you sprayed it. And then speaking of the lawn, so then you might have the violets, and the purple violets are, again, a wonderful dye. And the way to use violets, I think that's probably the most common and the easiest for you, is just in white vinegar. And so what you're going to do is, I'll just try to do this, but you can see this beautiful purple color that's on them. And that's just picked violets like I had in the photo in my slideshow. Picked violets, and it's just put into room temperature white vinegar in a jar, and then sat in a windowsill. And the sun will do its job, and you'll get the violets turn white, and the vinegar turns purple. And then you can use this vinegar in salad dressings and picklings and so on. And you can use the violets for dyes. You can dehydrate them and use them for dyes. By making a powder. The thing with them, though, when you are using them as a dye, is that if you add a sedative, so something to bind that color to your materials, like vinegar, let's say, it will turn like blue, like bright blue, sometimes even green. So you're not going to get a purple, but you do get a really fun neon blue or green color. So those are really fun to play with, and it's fun for kids as just like a kind of like a Bill Nye situation, just adding a drop, like an eyedropper of vinegar to purple, to not vinegar, adding like a purple drop of lemon juice or lime juice to this, and it'll turn like that color. So if you make like tie-dye socks, let's say, you can get so many fun colors by adding different other natural ingredients, other acids. So that's violets. With violets as well. There's the leaf, and the leaf is more on the medicinal side. It's fantastic for skincare. I make a lot of soaps. I make a lot of body care products for myself. And one of the things is violet oil. So this is very sticky, but this is oil that has the violet leaves. So they're dried, and then I have sunflower oil to coat this, and then this sits in the window. And then this oil can be strained off in this has been about a year, and then that can be strained off and used for soap making, or oh, that's my alarm to tell me to start getting ready to stop talking. And then you can use that for body care products. Okay, so I gotta hurry up. Willow grows along, it wants swampy areas. It likes wet areas. So willow, you can go online and look at what to look for when you're looking for willow. This time of year, you get the really young green leaves off the willow, and it is super underestimated. Like I said, willow is a fantastic propagator. It grows like crazy. It roots fantastic. And actually in probably every natural grow product, like for aiding your, like a fertilizer for aiding in vegetable growth or whatever, if it's a natural one, it's using willow leaf in it. And willow leaf helps with fast root growth. So we make this thing, and it's essentially a tea out of the young leaves. And in the spring, I take the young leaves and I dry them, and that's these. And then you can use this to make teas, steep teas, for root growth all year round. So let's say in the fall, I'm going to start, I don't know, I need to propagate something, cuttings, whatever. I can soak something in the tea for to help it out, to help it like just burst, like push roots faster. And it's great to feed your indoor plants as well. If you've got like tropicals, it likes that. It helps it out. So much information to like push all out at the same time. Powder, Kelly and I talked about this before I came on. So this is garlic powder. This is a fantastic thing to do with wild garlic tops. So when you, and it smells so good. And so when you get wild garlic, the bulbs are fantastic, obviously. So I have the bulbs here, and I vacuum pack the bulbs. It takes a lot of work to clean everything, but it's totally worth it. So I do quite a few of these bags, and I've got garlic. You can freeze it because you're probably going to cook with it. So if it's a little bit soft, that's okay. Or you can just keep it in your fridge. So that's the bulb. From the bulb, you also get the root. When you pull out the garlic, you get the whole root. Again, you don't want to take all of a garlic area. You want to take a little bit. They like swampy areas. They like near water or near creeks. They like forestry. And you can easily transplant it, very easily. If you find some, you can dig it up, you can transplant it to your garden, or take the seeds. The seeds will replenish themselves within a matter of a year. They're super fast. So the roots, if you can see, the roots are kind of like, they look like lo mein. And you can use these roots in stir fries, or you can fry them like Funyuns. If you have an air fryer, because like everybody apparently has an air fryer now, except for me, I don't. I have a regular fryer, and you can fry these bad boys up, and they are super good. But even just like on sandwiches, in salads, so on, you get that fabulous garlic flavor. The tops, however, can be very tough. When it comes time to harvest that stuff, the tops are already starting to get ready to seed, so they're getting hard and they're getting ready for wind and the harshness of summer. So and then but these are the tops. So what I do is I put them in my, I have a dehydrator, but if you have a gas oven, just your gas oven on pilot is a dehydrator. It's a perfect dehydrator. So you put it in there for a couple days, let it go. If you cook, just take them out, put them back in when you're done. And then you use a bean grinder, a coffee grinder, to make this powder. And then what you have is this fantastic garlic. You smell-o-vision, you just smell it. So good. And it's got fantastic flavor. And you can use this to flavor all of your waters, your stocks, your sauces, and so on. And this is awesome to have in your pantry. Not only that, you're going to get a lot, you get quite a bit, and this is going to get you through winter. So after you've used up your fresh garlic and you've used up your roots and you've used up all of those other things. And then in fall, when you're foraging, you might have wild carrot tops, which are also greens. You have the celery leaves. Maybe you eat all the stalk, but you don't eat the leaf. Save those leaves, dehydrate them, and save that. Onions as well. The tops, maybe you have onions that just go to, they sprout at your house. Dehydrate all those. When you turn those all into powder and you put those together, you've got this fantastic, completely wild or completely foraged bouillon. It's stock, essentially, free stock. It's the stock market of foraging. And you get to use that all winter long to flavor things, especially things like pilaf or risotto or like soups. It's essentially mirepoix, which we make in restaurants to flavor things, but it's all the greens and you get a fantastic color from those as well. I think I have to close this up, but the last thing, walking onions. Is wild onions the same as walking onions? I don't know what walking onions are. Never heard of walking onions, or I've never heard the term walking onions. So I don't know, but I gotta find that out. And if they are onions that actually walk, that's pretty cool. But I doubt that's true because I made that up in my head. Things that I always have. Things that I always have in my car that you probably shouldn't if you're going to get pulled over. A knife and pruners. I always have a knife ready because I could always just come across asparagus that I need to cut. So keep it out of reach, but having pruners is the safest thing, because with asparagus you can snap it, but if there's things that you come across that you need to use a good cut, like they're good to have. And these are like $8, you know. These bags are awesome. The reason I love these bags is, well, some things you can't collect in it because of the size of the holes, but these are great because when I'm collecting morels, let's say, I walk with this filled, it drags or it hits the brush or whatever, it's constantly spreading spores. This is dropping seeds and so on. So it's helping everything out along the way. So having those is important. And then good baskets, which after this, you could just weave your own basket, because I'm sure that everybody will. But weaving baskets is like my favorite winter thing. It's fantastic. And this is just sticks that grow by ponds, and you can turn it into vessels to which you keep these small felted radishes that nobody in their house has except for me. And then I've got, oh my gosh, and this is a backpack I'm working on. And so it needs straps, but this is also willow, which is really cool. And making these little foraged items, making the vessel that you forage in gets you excited. It makes you excited because the thing that you are putting things in, you made yourself. It's exciting. Why not? And then pruners for things like willow or for big things, big plants. Love those willow baskets. Big pruners, I like that. This is like a makeup tutorial on YouTube. I'm put my hand behind it. Pruners. My brand is Falco. They don't pay me to say that, but if they would, I would be pretty stoked. And then that's about it for me, I think. There's one book, if you do love willow, I saw a lot of people would love to make it, and willow it's everywhere. Again, you can help it out. This is a book by Jenny Crisp, and she's a fantastic British weaver. And so there is a lot of picture direction. So for beginners, this is an amazing book, and I'll give Kelly all of the information on this, but you can also follow Jenny Crisp on Instagram. And then if you are interested in also learning other weave, because I saw somebody ask if I do workshops. I don't, because I'm not organized enough. I'm too unstable to do workshops. Like it would just be very sporadic information, i.e. what's happening right now. So I would recommend Lena. It's called Lakeshore Willow, and it is in Wainfleet. And she is a basket weaver, and she taught me how to weave and still teaches me how to weave. And she cringes when she sees what I do because I don't follow rules very well. And but she is the basics of weaving. So you got to get the basics down pat. But doing it from home, watching YouTube, I love Pinterest. I mean, it's so much information. It's so much information. You'll never, ever run out of options of places to get it. But be mindful of what you're reading. Be mindful of where you're getting that information from. Obviously, our climates are all different. Ontario, just so you know, we're a zone 6. So when you're looking for information about what's happening and that kind of stuff, it's zone 6 you're going to be wanting to look for. So remember that something that you're getting information out of the States or other provinces might not be relatable to what's happening here in Ontario. It's obviously very hard to, for me, because I also have learning disabilities. So it's hard for me to organize all my thoughts into an hour. But if anybody has any questions that you think of down the road, please DM me, and I'm very hospitable to questions. So I think that that's it. Somebody should stop me. Somebody should stop me.
Thank you so much, Brittany. So much great information and energy, which is amazing. And hearing about some of the stuff that, as you said, we just kind of blaze by, and also an appreciation for the bounty of nature that we have here in Niagara. I'm just going to pop in Brittany's Instagram, which is Cul.ti.vate Niagara. It's addictive. There's lots of beautiful looking food that she makes and things she finds, and adorable animals she has. So be sure to give her a follow. I will be doing a follow-up email with some resources, some of the books that Brittany's talked about, as well as some library resources. We have some books on this. As we said, it's important to make sure you're doing your research before you go out, and again, making sure that you're if you are trying out foraging, going out places that you're allowed to be, asking permission, and only taking what you need, not what you want, and really focusing on that sustainable element of this practice. Does anybody have any further questions for Brittany on the wilds of foraging? Yeah, we're just wondering, Stecker is wondering, can you still forage for everything that you mentioned, or what would sort of be the next, I guess, thing you could forage for in the fall?
So right now you can obviously do dandelion greens and the flowers. You can take the stems and hang those. You'll want to do some research. It's very simple though. Essentially you hang the dandelion stems just like you would hang anything for drying. Morels are done, but like I said, you're going to want to look out to start a relationship with somewhere that you might be able to find it. You're going to be looking for willow and dogwood and weaving materials coming into the fall. So what you're going to do is look now and spot them while the leaves are green, where you can see them growing, etc. And then in the fall, go back to cut them, and then they dry out over winter. So yeah, and if anybody has any more questions about that, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, garlic mustard. So garlic mustard, that's going to run its course for a long time. I don't have examples of garlic mustard, but it is super awesome for again, stalks and drying. It's fantastic for drying, and it's amazing for marinades. If you want to make a like a chimichurri for marinating meats, garlic mustard is fantastic for it. It's very easy to spot. It grows like crazy a lot of places, so that's what I look for. I didn't really think of that. See, there's not enough time. Fiddleheads are done. Fiddleheads are now ferns. I forgot to get into that as well, but fiddleheads are the start of ferns. So if you have ferns growing in your yard, which you know they spread like crazy, it's the tops of ferns. Yes, Chloe is my sister. And then and you can tell because we both talk really fast. And then what was the other? Chives. Chives you can literally spot anywhere. They're along ditches. They're everywhere. They grow like crazy. And if you get a little patch of chives, plant them in your yard, plant them in your garden, wherever. Onions, chives pair fantastic with lettuces. So if you have a lettuce growing box, put some onions in there, and then you're gonna have seeds to replenish yourself for years to come. Like, it's impossible to kill chives, essentially. They'll just keep going. So, and chives is, again, another green that you can dry and make powders out of, and you can use that in your bouillon and so on. I'm trying to think of what else I've got. Violets are right now. You'll see violets right now, and they'll be going for another couple weeks. And then I can't think of anything else. I think that's it.
Kristen was wondering, is there some type of a Niagara calendar for it to forage, or like any, if there's any blogs or anything like that you want to share, or again, follow.
Yeah.
You follow Britney, you'll kind of see what she's out looking for. She does a fantastic job of
the best, honestly, one of the best resources is following foragers, following other people who do it, because they kind of remind you where you're at in the calendar year. I don't know if there is a calendar out there. I'm sure that somewhere there has to be a published one. I mean, even just search spring foraging or summer foraging in Ontario, or so on, fall foraging in Ontario. And my mind doesn't really work in a list format, and my mind doesn't really work in a calendar. So I don't have one of those. I just know by what's happening in my life now is like a trigger to remind me of what's about to happen. So, and now spring is the only time that I can, like, I'm 100% on foraging, or I'm 100% on like gathering, because now I have a 2-acre garden that I have to sustain a restaurant from. And then I also am finding wild foods. So, and then I'm also cooking, and I'm also a mom, and I also have a bunch of animals. So, and then I got to do my art because I have to. So it's not really, midsummer's not really a time that I go out and look for stuff so much. There is a lot out there, but for me, it's not my time to thrive. The only recommendation I can do is say to look online and do some searching. But if you do this properly, you can take seeds from the majority of the things that we talked about and move them to your own home, making the convenience, I mean, bar none. So, yeah.
Perfect. And someone had asked what your restaurant was, so I did let them know it is Hans Burger in Jordan, which is a lovely atmosphere, amazing food. So when we are able to, I recommend everyone check that out. A fantastic little local spot. Again, we love our local here in Lincoln.
Yeah.
So if there are no more questions, we are at 7:30, so we will wrap up there. Just a couple other programs coming up at the library in our backyard series while we're all staying home. Next Wednesday, we have backyard beekeeping for pollination with Ryan Heffron from My Niagara Garden. And then the following week, we have Carla Carlson from Niagara Nature Tours, who will be doing an introduction to backyard bird watching. So you can find those on the library website. It's going to be a great time. It's been a very fun series. If you missed this or came in late, it will be up on the library's YouTube channel as well. As we also have a lot of summer programming coming up, so watch for summer reading challenges and lots of good stuff. We'll be out in the community a lot more as well, so stay tuned to the library social media if you're not following us for information about programs and books. And I will, as I said, be sending a follow-up email with some foraging books, any resources that Britney has to share, and all that good stuff. So lots to do, lots on the go. But thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Britney, so much for sharing your story and your passion for this and the information. A great presentation. Very much appreciated, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, stay safe, and as we said, do your research, but have a good time getting out into nature and checking out what you might be able to eat. Have a good one. Thank you.